Asinivusele amaswati amahle sinibingelele nina benkosi lenhle ehlelweni Embili kanye libito lami ngingiJohn ngakaPhirezi Sibongo kuyinfokodo ukuthi bese ngaphindze sidibane nalomuhla sitawukhulumisa ke tindzaba letitawulekelela ukuthi ke sikwadi ke ukubuka ukuthi sibhajwe kuphi nalapho sifuna ke yakhona singafika kanjani ngekuhlanganisa ke imicondvo luhlelo lolu lungena ke njalo ke ngensimbi yesithupha kusihlwa ngelisonto luphindwe ngalesihlanu ngensimbi ye11 ke ekseni ngethemba ukuthi niphilile amaswati akithi kuphina kuphi ke lapho lo msakato unithola khona emaswati atawukhumbula ukuthi evikini leliphelile sikhulumise ke indzaba la lebeyibuka lokuthi bosomabhizinisi labancane banensaya yokuthola ke nekukhulisa yokuthola ke imali letingakhulisa ke emabhizinisi abo sabuka lokuthi ingabe babhajwa kuphi tikuphi letinkinga letenta ukuthi kumbe labo labanale mali phecelezi capital noma ke ifinance yekuniketa lamabhizinisi bakhona ukukhululeka batikhiphe leto timali leto siyikhulumisile leyo ndzaba sibuka nemitamo leseyendiwe nguhulumende from a policy and other structural aspects lekabendile uhulumende lokufaka ekhathi ke indzaba ye loan guarantee scheme lelekelela lokuthi mangabe application yakho seyiphumile noma ke yendeke kahle ukwati ke ukuthi usebenzise that loan guarantee scheme which is a resident with the Central Bank of Eswatini imitamo yethu ke kulolu hlelo ngekwenta ke tinfo letinjengaleto ukuthi labo ke labane maphupho noma kumbe ama objectives in 2022 ukuthi ke ngifuna ukukhulisa ibusiness yami kodwa insaya lengibhekene nayo indzaba yemali esathemba nje ukuthi emaswati lokunye lesakukhulumisa lokufaka ekhathi nekulandzelela ukuthi how can I put together a solid business case akhona ke kutilandzelela leto tinfo leto ngekusebenzisa some state owned agencies kumbe nalapho kungabhadalwa khona, and I did mention that I am a recipient of some of those offices lokuya nje uyobuta ubutisise bakuchazele they don't charge you nothing because government ubathumela kwamaswati akithi namuhla ke sifuna ke kubuka la indzaba ikakhulukati yalesimo semnotho lesikhona emhlabeni lesikhona even la kangwane kuyethusana kakhulu mawutawuthi uyavuka ekseni uthole ke umbiko wetindzabeni kwekuthi ke sinkwa engathi ke sitawukhula ngabo senti kumbe labangemashumi lasiphohlongo kumbe 80 cents noma kumbe ngelishumi kukhulunywa ngendzaba ukuthi imali yokugibela itawukhula kumbe labo kumbe labasebenzisa tincola tekuthutha bafuna kumbe ngiyabekisa 13% of what we are already paying as bus fare or transport fares tindzaba tabo petrol eminyakeni lophelile tisethuse kakhulu in a space of about 2 to 3 months petrol wenyukeke kabili ukhanza ukuthi lokho sekuyasilimata even in terms of our budgeting, our forecasting, and in terms of holding a positive attitude towards doing certain things that can grow us as individuals, as businesses, even as a country. Kuti khulumisa ke leto tindzaba leto sibuka lokuthi ukutawusita lokuthi emaswati akwati lokuthi abe nemicondvo wekanticipate alungiselele bese kumbe ayakwati ke kuresponda ngendlela letawenda lokuthi ayasati lesimo lesikubhekile ke ukuthi mathutane ukuthi njengoba ke icala umnyaka ingwenyama yemhlaba itawuvula ke iParliament mayivula ke iParliament itasiniketa ke isithombe sekuthi ingabe ke live lingaphuma ke libheke kuphi etindzabeni intalo umnyaka wanga 2022 mayicetha ingwenyama kutase ke kulandzela ke ibudget speech nanayo letawuthatha ke enkhulumeni yayo ke ingwenyama sibukile ke lokuthi ema solutions lamanyendi atase ke ayachamuka even through the budget speech ngile kungiyona ke ifinance some of the aspirations that we have as a country kunimama ke maswati amahle ukuthi nibe nathi ke la kule nkhulumo lesinayo namuhla ngihleti ke namajala amathathu la le katangona tawungelekelela nje kuyilobola lendzaba kungakusiko kumbe ukuthi sifuna ke ukukhulumisa ukuthi sidane ama solutions ngasekudla sami ngudokotela Chongwa lo we organization yatiwa nguluke nguSing Safred he is also a renowned economist and my opinions akhe we really appreciate and we believe they can also be of good value in the program today kanti ke emkhathisini kuna Thembi Nkosi Dube who's a financial analyst utasita kubuka lama trends etinfo letendekako ehlangothini lwekubuka ke imali kanzi ke lapha ngesheya kuna nathi gule simsebenzisa kakhulu ikakhulukati ukuthi uyasisita lokulandzelela ukuthi emaswati yini lokwakhathatako yini kumbe lekungendiwa abhale ke lapho abhala khona in particular we like him because he resonates kakhulu nebantu labasha who we believe if we were to do something around integrating them into the development processes of the country ngathuthuka ke liembile Dr. Chongwa angubingelele and a very good evening and a warm welcome to the show this evening.
Ngiyabonga John.
Of course. Oh yeah, I do know you speak Iswati as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming through, Dr. Chongwa.
Indeed, it's my pleasure.
Of course. Babe Dube angubingelele nyamatane kuphela thuba lekuvusela emaswati.
Ngiyabonga John ngiphinze ngibingelele sibese emaswati.
Sibonga kakhulu kule gwabane angubingelele mnethu kuphela thuba lekuvusela emaswati.
Ngibonge kakhulu John Perez ngiphinde ngivusele Maswati my viewers. It's good to be here once again.
Thank you so much. Ngingajabula kucala ngawe Gwabane indzaba sengiyendlalele. It is very important that we distribute information in such a manner that is going to be useful in our society. Singatikhulumi letinto even at a higher level. I've expressed my sentiments about the shock you receive when you wake up one morning and suddenly there's a huge change in the market, you know. Certain prices of essential services have increased and you haven't even anticipated those. One of the things we saw, masibuya kuma holiday akhisimosi na holidays are New Year. And I think I was driving here to work, Eswatini TV. I find a young man by the street lights, the cross section, Babane Government Hospital, Kia Motors, and the other sectors going up there. This young man is carrying a placard and he's looking for a job. And he is saying, I am a graduate, I don't need you to give me anything. Can you please help me to find a job? And I think this represents a broader issue in the country. What do you make of such a what did you make of such a case, Nati?
Thank you, John, and Happy New Year to you and the viewers, because it's my first time here this year. I must say it's a cry for help, Perez, and it just shows the boiling point the issue of unemployment has actually reached. We have heard the cries for a very long time now, such that, you know, once you hear a voice for quite a long time, it then becomes sort of usual. Whereas unemployment is not a usual thing. It's something that needs urgent solutions. It needs drastic solutions. It needs us, not just government. It's not a government issue. Unemployment is not a government issue. It's a national issue. Wherever we are in all our pockets of spaces, from community level, from family level, all the way up to small businesses and all the way up to the broader private sector. What are we doing to address this big elephant in the room? Because we cannot really shy away from it. Because if we do shy away from discussing the issues of unemployment, we will then see things like we saw of that young man now saying, please look at me, stop ignoring our cries as young people. So I'm hopeful that from that it has sort of put in a shock effect to really get us back into the drawing board to say, what are we doing really to, as we kickstart the year, what are we doing and what can we do in our various spaces to really reach out and show that we are hearing the desperate pleas of the graduates, the desperate pleas of the skilled, the desperate pleas of the skilled and so on and so forth, of the young people in the country who are looking for jobs and are not finding them, and who are looking to start businesses and perhaps are finding it a bit tough to have that startup capital. And John, that then presents an open case for us to then say, how can we make access to finance easier? The youth policy spells it out that entrepreneurship is the key to sort of solving unemployment in Eswatini. But obviously there are hindrances like access to finance. So what are we going to do different in 2021 so that we do not see more of those young people with the placards out there, but they have a hub that they can go to where they can then bring their sort of complaints, not complaints per se, but their requests and you know, sort of be taken care of and their concerns be fully addressed. I think that is the most critical issue on the table, not for government alone, for John Perez, for Nati Kule, for everybody who is a stakeholder in the country, to say how can we all play a role in addressing unemployment, especially for the youth.
Yeah. Masikhula Nyamatane ekhaya ukhula bakutshela ukuthi education is the key to success or to your success, and it's very disappointing when all of a sudden you see a young man in the street with a placard and say, I am looking for a job, I have been looking for a job for a long time, I am qualified in this area of expertise. Where have we lost it in terms of our education? Because it would seem like a lot of our young people or a lot of our graduates are not employed. Is it the current state of the economy? Is it the graduates themselves not understanding how to utilize the education that they have gained?
I think it's both, and the culture. I'll say it's both because maybe our education is more of a colonial one that focuses on a white-collar job. But if you come to the culture, our parents have been employed all their lives, and we've thought that's the way of life. And then that affects the way we view people who are self-employed, because that view actually gives us a perception of what real life is. If you start your own business and you resign and you start a job, or you just go from school straight to start your business, at first people don't realize what you're doing. It's like you have lost it in life. But it's a culture that has to be uprooted, such that we realize that everybody has a role to play. It's not only government, like Gule is saying, but even ourselves who have to support each other. Buy what is local and let them raise the quality of whatever they are producing. There's one thing he said, which I want to link to what Dr. Chungwa said last week on your program, that banks are there, they want to get money. What they need, let me say like he said it, they always willing to offer loans because that's where they make money. So in other words, it is easy to get a loan from a bank if you satisfy their requirements. But the question is, why aren't they meeting their requirements? And why aren't they getting the loans? Normally, the problem is on the way we view life and the perception in supporting the locals. Let me say that's where the problem is. We still have a long way to cultivate in us a culture of self-confidence and realizing that you have to do something, contribute to the country positively.
Exactly.
Dr. Chong, I think you, before we started off with the interview, you mentioned that employment or unemployment is not a structured issue. And you elaborated and said, people that are unemployed could be doing something, and I think this really speaks to what can we do about the graduates, because in a state of economy where if we were to analyze like we are going to, how do you survive as a graduate, because the people that are already employed are also suffering. They are saying life is expensive as it is, but how do these unemployed graduates, amongst those even that are not graduates, how do they survive? What can we do to absorb them or to integrate them into this economy? Because I believe there should be opportunities for, especially those with skills and qualifications.
I've been following what the previous speakers were articulating on this issue, which is very, very crucial. First things first, we have to understand the computer principle of garbage in, garbage out. It does not start and end with what we see a gentleman carrying a billboard and said, I'm looking for a job. No, that is basically the outcome, if not the output or the impact in the long run. It begins with understanding the labor market. Labor is just like a product, except that it's the only product on the labor market which has got a backward curve. It's a product we buy and sell labor using the law of demand and supply. So if you are a graduate and you seemingly not getting employed, there's something wrong with the labor market. There's an imbalance maybe with the product that you're offering on the labor market. Our young people, they strongly believe that as long as I just have a paper, I'll get a job. It doesn't work like that. And we can't blame government, we can't blame the general public, because you are offering a wrong product, number one. So number two, the young people must understand that it is not the government's job, this is very important, to employ you. That's what we Africans think, that is government's responsibility. Government's main job is to provide platforms and systems that are going to facilitate the germination of self-employment, which is entrepreneurship. Now, that is where we miss it. So that graduate already has a skill. Why don't you start by going door to door and offering your peace jobs? That is where we are missing it, like the previous speaker. If we have an attitude of saying, all what I need to do is to learn how it is done, I don't need to be employed, then we would be talking less frustrations among young people in terms of employment and unemployment.
But what do you mean when you say that there's probably a problem with the products we are offering in the market, you know? Are you, for instance, saying we are overproducing a certain type of graduates which have no space in the market?
No. The market will always be there. These are models in economics. The market will always be there. And the problem of the market, we don't understand what the market wants. The market works with the law of demand and supply. If you supply what is in demand, then you're going to enjoy the cream. Now, anything that you do has got the potential to be absorbed in the market. So all what the young people, they lack is like what Mr. Tembi said, they don't understand that I can do without government. I have what it takes. I've learned how, for example, to fix a fridge. All what I need to do is to look for a broken fridge. That part is a missing middle among young people who are going and coming out of college.
How can we correct that? And I think, Nati, you started this conversation to say we need a multi-sectoral approach to correcting that, you know. Our universities are producing governments, you know, and we know government is sponsoring the students to go and study, you know. The payment or the administrative aspect of running this institution rise with governments, you know. What do we do? You know, it seems like government has played a part to a certain extent, you know, but how do we get other stakeholders to participate in correcting the problem?
All right. Other stakeholders are trying to do their best, but you can take the animal to the water, but you cannot force it to drink the water.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say with that parable, John, is to say entrepreneurship programs are there. There's plenty. We're with you on another program where the Youth Fund CEO was sitting here and he said he didn't have any loan applications within 2 weeks of opening the loans. And that says a lot about the same youth that is seeking opportunities, that is now not going out to grab the opportunities once they are there. So what does that mean? It means there also is a responsibility on the part of the unemployed or the job seekers to also play their role. We've spoken of a multi-sectoral approach. That multi-sectoral approach includes a responsibility also on the job seeker to also seek the relevant information in order to empower him or herself and not to be one-dimensional. As Dr. Chungo was saying, do not start up and say, I finished school, I'm going to get a job. But also now be multi-dimensional to say, if I don't get a job, what is plan B up to plan Z? You know, and just look at the various options. And with each of the options, which are the supporting mechanisms within those options? There's sole trading, there's going into small business. These are all different types of self-employment. But you have to look at which one suits the environment that you're operating in. I'll make an example. Where I live, in the market, there's a person who's got a print shop, but on the side, they are doing fruits. Just next to the fruits, there's somebody printing because supply and demand, Dr. Chunga. He saw an opportunity of the students. Yes. As much as they want to print at school, they also, the line is too long. So he is supplying to a demand. Yes, and he's got lower rental costs. He's got lower other overheads because he's within a community. So that is the mindset shift.
Yeah.
There needs to be a mindset shift, and there also needs to be an intentionality to go through the 27 alphabets, John Perez.
Okay. I want to echo what he's saying. The other thing that remains important it's the structure of the economy. I just want to maybe to look back to the job creation, because it's not only government that has to create jobs, like he says. It is not only big entities that have to create jobs. John has to create jobs. Dr. Chonga has to create jobs. He has to create jobs. So we all have a role if we can all have that mindset that we have to start jobs. In an ideal economy, one or two of us would be supposed to be running a company that has employed maybe at least 10 graduates that are actually earning a living through your company. Now the question is, where is the problem? Why aren't we there? What I've discovered myself is the economic situation in the country and how it is run. It doesn't give you that opportunity to explore, more especially the professional jobs. You can go to Kumbis, that's fine, and construction, I think that's fine. But you see the very, very fine jobs that are very, very professional and specialized skills is not easy to go into in this country. Now, what we have to address is where is the problem, because the graduates are specialists in those very, very fine jobs. He's talking about somebody who's printing. That's simple. But where do I start a company that employs economic graduates at the university? The problem is, one of the problems that I observed myself, which I think I have seen a change. When I started early in the 2010s, it was a problem. Entities relied on expatriates, on companies that are not within the boundaries of Eswatini. If I would come with a proposal that I want to do this, then they will say, no, we know you are just a graduate from UNISWA. We don't trust what we have. Yeah. Maybe let me use that term. We don't trust what we have. If the economic environment can support the locals, we'll go somewhere. If it can be open that you can approach an entity, if I'm an auditor and I write my proposal, because it seems like you have to be a very, very reputable entity to get a professional job. Where do you get the reputation? Because I've just completed UNISWA, maybe I've worked for 5 years for company ABC, and then they say we need someone with 10 years experience. Where have you worked? We haven't. So we don't have the mentorship from the other entities that are professional. It has worked for South Africa, the issue of, is it PBE? PBE. Yeah, that thing works. PBE. Where if a consultant gets a job, there should be a young person who is there, who's starting. And you won't get the tender until that person is attached. Then they were able to grow. We need something like that. If company X hires a consultant to do a job for whatever they are doing, which is very professional, they attach this one to start. Then that will be a reference. Then it grows. Yeah. It grows. It will absorb the professional, because the main problem now are the professionals. Otherwise, combis and construction, that's fine.
Yeah. Thank you, Nyamatane. Dr. Chonga, you are also a specialist in the area of research and development. I don't know if you can share a model with us in terms of what other countries are doing, especially in the developed countries. I'm looking at the retirement age in the Kingdom of Eswatini, and especially with most other countries. You find that even probably within our institution, you retire at age 55, 60. And meanwhile you have these graduates at age 22. Where do they go to if I'm still sitting here at age 60? How are other countries approaching this issue of having, yes, you are skilled, you are a professional, you also hold a master's or a PhD in that particular area, but what do we do with this one if you are still sitting here? What have other countries, how have other countries modeled their employment structure to try and help absorb these graduates, for instance, because not everyone is going to go into business after being a graduate. Some will have to be absorbed in the formal sector.
It's true. Just in Africa, let us not go to developed countries. If you take the case study of Rwanda. Just Rwanda, where President Kagame is. Every civil servant is on contract.
Civil servants on contract.
Yeah, you don't sit in the bus for a revenue. And the contract-based model was recommended by World Bank.
To the government of Rwanda?
Yeah, because Rwanda, Remember, after the genocide, the country was really sub-zero. But it is where it is today because of consultants. And one issue that Rwanda was advised was make sure you start on a good pace with the public sector. Because public sector economics is what brings all these headaches. So what happens is if it's not about retirement age, it's about sharing the little piece of cake on the table. If we say a contract-based model, if, John, you've been employed by government to work for 10 years on contract, number one, you know your days are numbered. There's an eye on you. And time itself will fix you. If you are a bad seed,
It's a performance-based
it's a
model.
performance-based. So it's a time-bound. But if it's a performance-based model, which is not time-bound, this is where we have policies, but nobody cares because I'm here until 65. I even forged the number of years I have in the certificates.
Just to get more years.
Because of corruption. Because
Yeah.
corruption is there to stay in the public sector,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So what I'm trying to say is this. If they say 10 years, but before 10 years, let the people be trained to say this is how you exit public sector. This is how you come out of the comfort zone. So they are trained in such a way that they long to even leave government. Because the incentive, it's so much rewarding that when they wear options, either to come out of the system or remain in the system, they feel losing. So they train them entrepreneurship so that when they leave government with the skill that they train, because training is a resource, plus the money that the government is giving them in terms of salaries, that is also government resource. So if they train them to come out of the system so that they start their own systems, then in the process of starting their own systems, they employ even others into their own systems. Then it becomes a multiplier effect. As they release them from the system, the new entrants come into the system. And also they're there for the number of years. So in the process, government systems now becomes an input, process, output model. Now the model that we have, it is an input, then input, it bursts. The model that we have in Africa, our public sector models, they don't process and model people to become small economic entities like what American models does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dube, why do you think we have sustained such a model for a long time? Because like Dr. Chongwa is saying, it's got its own challenges in terms of creating an atmosphere of complacency within the workplace, and service delivery is affected and so on. But also at a broader level, it affects how we absorb those who are waiting to get into the system.
It has been like this because we are Africans. That's the first thing we have to know. We are Africans. And there are ways we do things. It's a culture. You know, the difference with the Western and Africans is that we are more communal. Yes. We are concerned with what somebody will say. Whatever I do has to be accepted. Now, whilst that is good, it's Africanism. But it has some problems because if you write a policy like he's saying, and I'm the manager who is supposed to tell John, your time is up, we don't accept that. And there are these riots. So our culture, if we go to his route, we have to do it in the way that works for a Maswat. Let me use to that context. Let's understand our Siswati culture and modify the way we think in terms of employment. Because our culture is once I get a job, until I die or until retirement, and I'll get my pension thereafter, which is it's a short-sighted view which we hold, and we have to change that. Now, government has to have some incentives. As he's talking about the in and out, think about those five directors that have retired, and they start jobs that employ, let's say 555 graduates. That's a multiplier effect. So we have to have a culture that encourages those that are starting outside to employ the other people. Because if the four of us, I employed four, he employs four. How many graduates we've employed? 16. You see, so government has to work on incentives and on getting those who have started those professional things. Guys, what is your problem? How can we help you? Such that, because if I can take you to Mabane, you see down here in town where there was SRA before. Those are supposed to be offices run by guys like our age, with our employees. If you go to Johannesburg in Sentin, that's where they are, because the economy has actually opened up to them. So we are running a challenge with our economy that's not open to professionalism, and that doesn't support, I'll use that word. Although there are these schemes and all those things, they tend to be exogenous as opposed to endogenous in how we do things.
Yeah. Thanks once again, Nyamatane. Kule, I read one of your articles in mainstream media where you were saying you anticipate that after His Majesty the King articulates the vision for the year, the minister can also throw up a strategic plan that can address the issue of unemployment. You know, what are some of the things that probably can be done at a policy level from the Ministry of Finance and the other ministries, just to try and consolidate things, you know, because we cannot sit here and lament the situation throughout the year and come back next year and do the same thing. What little can we do that can change the situation on the ground for those who are unemployed, whether graduates or non-graduates?
Yeah, definitely. We are anticipating those two addresses, very key addresses of the year. I always make sure that I tune into those because they give a sort of direction to people on the ground. To understand how the year will unfold. We were with you watching the other day here on the program, the finance minister also just saying some of the key points of quick wins that were done over the previous financial year. And he was speaking in a very jovial and optimistic tone, saying he is seeing a lot of progress as opposed to the previous financial years, despite the adverse effects of COVID-19. That is to say, Perez, as much as we are facing a lot of challenges, Eswatini is blessed with a lot of professionals and a lot of intellectuals like the ones we're sitting with here, who are able to draft some very brilliant plans that, when implemented, really do take the nation forward. So it is something that we're looking forward to see how structured the budget speech will be in terms of the SMART goal setting principle. In terms of being specific, in terms of being measurable, in terms of being achievable, in terms of being realistic, and in terms of being time-based. Because that's basically where we are now, Perez. We've heard a lot, but now we just need to know the targets. If you're saying you would love to create so many jobs by a certain a point in time, or create an environment that can create a certain number of jobs, we would like to hear that report back. We're anticipating that sort of report back to hear how far we've gone in terms of our recovery strategy, for example, Perez, because we already set our goals in terms of the ease of doing business. We all know what the impediments are that are drawing us back as a nation. But what are we doing? What have we done so far? What are the wins? And how are we really hammering even further in terms of that? And just before Dr. contributes. And also, we also outlined very well when the new cabinet came in. They outlined very, very well, specifically in terms of the SMART goals, in terms of the key sectors that will accelerate economic development in the country, including agriculture, including ICT.
Tourism and the likes.
Tourism and the likes. But obviously, we are not seeing much of an activity in terms of the unemployed trying to jump into agriculture, for example. I made in one of my writings to say, when people think of agriculture, they think of being in the field, whereas agriculture has a value chain. it has transport systems, it has the professionals that Mr. Dube was talking about, it has financial officers, it has marketing professionals, it has so many dynamic professionals that if one person decides to venture into agriculture, it then creates a huge ecosystem and then springs back into life the economy of the country. But the problem now is Perez ready to be the one who's going to be a director of an agriculture company. Perez says, no, I do not see myself in the field. It's not about being in the field. It's about going into a sector that has the potential to employ a lot of Eswatini and also make you, who is the first one to open up that agriculture company, you will be the biggest recipient at the end of the day. You can contribute, Dr. Choma.
Well put, Nati. Thank you so much. And I think I am happy when I hear people of your caliber, especially like I said when I first introduced you, you resonate with the young people. And I am hoping that young people are listening to this. And it's being said by a young person, you know, who understands how we can move forward, you know, because I think we touched on the issue of us looking at our credentials, our papers, our qualifications, and say, I've got this, I can't do that, you know. But where are the opportunities? Which is why I was saying we cannot sit here year in and year out and lament the situation. What can we do, like right now, that doesn't need government? If you've got 5 hectares of land within your community, what can you do with those? Are there opportunities, Dr. Chongwa? But I think you wanted to echo Nati's sentiments.
Yes, you brought up a very practical element, which actually should be the gist of our discussion, because at the end of the day, we need results. You see, up to 2030, the world is talking about only one language, of which Eswatini is not in exemption. We are part of the world society, and that is called sustainability or sustainable development. Now, there are basically 2 words that would help us to be sustainable: integration, inclusivity. These are very crucial words. Mr. Natis simply brought up a very, very practical element, which I buy into that. Study the value chain system. It is actually an industrial analysis. This is where most business people who want to start a business, they miss it. They just focus in one dimension. They all want to be in town, called CEOs, swinging in the front of a chair. Okay? You have lost it. But value chain is industrial analysis. Let's take, for example, agriculture. Eswatini has got more than potential in agriculture. Did you know that this country has got 3 African climates in one country?
Eswatini.
Yes. There's Mediterranean here. There's Savannah climate here. Then the other one is, which one is that? But there are 3.
There's the tropical.
Yes, it's there. 3 of them. Some countries like where I come from, Zambia, there's only savanna climate. And you have to take it or leave it. Now, if we take agriculture, a young person must see the bigger picture. Starting from the land itself, from the planning itself, from the seeds, from the harvesting, up to consumption, distribution, all those channels. So the problem is where we don't have programs where we could go with people like Bonati, college after college, intake after intake, to say this is how you think. You are in the cocoon of education in the classroom. That's a cocoon. You learn theory there. There's no water there, but jump out of the river. You jump into the river, you find the current is moving so fast.
Yeah.
In the long run, you start blaming government. In fact, this is very important. When you hear government saying they have released the bursaries, scholarships, it's not free money. There is no free lunch under the sun. In fact, government is investing in you so that you find a job and begin to return tax to the government, so that the government can be able to help others. That's the circular flow of income. So if you are not contributing to government's realization of tax, which means government has made loss on you.
Yeah.
So it is. So people usually think that government doesn't enjoys when it sees people unemployed. It's a loss. If all people, if you remember, one of the fundamentals of macroeconomics is full employment. Why full employment? Once everyone is employed, they contribute a relatively small money called tax. And once you've got a relatively tax which is aggregate, collected, then we are able now to have incentives. The hospitals, the roads, those are non-excludables. Now, if you go to a government hospital and you are there complaining that there is no medicine, and then you are not employed, whether self-employed or otherwise, which means you are a problem.
Why young people, or generally those who are unemployed, or even those who prefer to be employed in favor of utilizing available resources like land, choose to do that, Nyamatane? And how can we break that mentality? And I think there has to be a shift, because like I keep emphasizing, we need to change this. And if we say people are unemployed, we need to be also thinking about what solutions are available and challenge them towards that direction.
Okay, some people have taken the courage to start their own companies, but they've had problems. I think one of the economy works like I pay him, he pays you, she pays you. That's just how it is.
Yes.
Now, the problem in this country, the cycle is not complete. I do a job, I submit, I deliver to him, and he does not pay so and so. The whole thing comes to a halt. So if I'm talking for the ones who have taken the courage to start their own things. We have been discussing one of the social measures with some of the guys who are into business. And I was surprised that this is a general concern for all the guys who are actually pushing their own agenda. They have done work, nobody is willing to pay. Now, what happens? Eventually, I will say, this thing is not working, let me get a job.
I need
At least
security. I need to
eat.
put food on the table.
Yes,
on
and
a
then you
daily
go
basis.
back. So if the system, most especially of payments of SMEs, can be efficient and effective. If I do a job for company X and I give them an invoice, they are happy with my product, I shouldn't wait for a year.
Yeah, and we shouldn't talk about this as if it's something that has been a challenge for government, the issue of paying SMEs. And I also think private companies engage SMEs, and they also have tendencies also, maybe some of them, maybe not all, but the SMEs, like you are saying, really struggle. And I think we need to challenge even the private sector to do the same.
Yeah. I think the other thing, I think the issue of corporate governance in entities is very, very important. As an outsider, I shouldn't know that, because if I submit my invoice to the accounts department, that's the last thing I have to do. But I don't have to be told that it's with John in his desk, is there to be signed, he's on leave. That's not mine as an outsider. And entities, it has turned up to be normal.
Yeah. Say, for instance, if you had employed 5 people, like we had been making that example, how do you get to pay those people? Eventually, you lose them, and we quantify them as part of those that are unemployed, simply because of those challenges, I think, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming through, and I hate to say that some of the things I was hoping we will discuss with you, we haven't touched them at all. And I think the issue of the state of the economy is a critical issue we need to discuss, especially ahead of His Majesty's speech, the budget speech. We need to psych up ourselves, in terms of anticipating, and also because if we raise these voices, and I always say government has ears and eyes, they listen, they see what's happening around, I am hoping that we can get some time probably next week and just sit and speak to the state of the economy. Why is the economy the way it is? And especially with COVID-19 prevailing, and I know it has broken down the value chain system as well in a big way, at a global scale, and how that is affecting the Kingdom of Eswatini. Dr. Chongwa, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you so much, Mr. John.
Yamatane, I really appreciate it, and I do hope that you gentlemen will afford me the time to be here again next week. Kwabane, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
Maswahla mahle sibongele kakhulu. Siyathemba ukuthi ma conversations noma ke indaba lethi njengalethi esikhulumisako ikakhulukazi tilekelela lokuthi kumbe noma tingeke tilethele ama-solutions instantly but tiyakushintsha lokucabanga nendlela yekubuka tintfo. Ngihle ngibekisa ngibone umhlaba kumbe ngi-7 to 8 hectares bathi hey leli jaha liyasebenza eMbabane lathola umsebenzi kuphi hayi uyayibulala uthola 2000 7-8 hectares of land sitting idle there. Ukhanza-ke kulamalanga sowujutshwa ngeticucu uyathengiswa ngube ngabo 10,000 20,000. Where are we going as a country if we are not going to appreciate a fundamental resource such as land? Kulamanye emave ukhanza ukuthi vele bahlanyela ngisho nasetinzabeni but we have the land, it's sitting idly. In the meantime we are saying we have a huge unemployment rate in the kingdom of Eswatini. What really are we doing Eswatini? And I do hope the answers can come from within us. Jehovah kasigcine ke sibonane ngalokudako evikini elitako. Nitsale kahle.